My daughter, Sophia, believed she had found the perfect husband. Ethan seemed to have everything going for him. He was charismatic, successful, and knew exactly how to win people over. Everyone who met him liked him instantly, but there was something about him that never sat right with me. I couldn't explain it at first. It wasn't anything he said directly. It was the way he watched people, the way he listened whenever money was mentioned, and the way his attention sharpened whenever the conversation turned toward my business. For over 3 decades, I had built my company from the ground up. What started as a small operation eventually grew into a successful enterprise that provided a comfortable life for my family. Because of that success, I always worried about one thing. I feared that someone might one day enter my daughter's life, not because they loved her, but because they loved what they thought she would inherit. When Sophia introduced Ethan to the family, everyone was impressed. He was polite, intelligent, and seemingly devoted to her. But as time passed, I noticed a pattern that nobody else seemed to see. Ethan asked questions most future sons-in-law never ask. He wanted details about my assets, investment accounts, properties, and long-term financial plans. Family gatherings somehow always drifted toward discussions about wealth whenever he was around. At first, I convinced myself he was simply curious. Then his interest became impossible to ignore. One property fascinated him more than anything else. Several years earlier, I had purchased an old industrial building near the center of the city. The structure was rarely used and attracted little attention from anyone, except Ethan. Every time the building came up in conversation, he seemed unusually interested. He constantly asked why I kept paying maintenance costs on a property that appeared to serve no obvious purpose. I never answered his questions directly. Instead, I smiled and changed the subject. The less information he received, the more obsessed he became. Eventually, I decided to learn more about him. I hired an investigator to conduct a discreet background check. The findings were troubling. Before meeting my daughter, Ethan had accumulated substantial debt through failed ventures and risky financial decisions. Several former associates described him as someone who frequently pursued opportunities for personal financial gain, often at the expense of others. The more information I received, the clearer the picture became. Still, I needed proof. Suspicion alone wasn't enough, so I came up with a plan. Over the following months, I allowed subtle rumors to circulate among extended family members. The story suggested that the old industrial building contained highly valuable company assets and confidential holdings. I never confirmed the rumor, but I never denied it either. Whenever Ethan asked questions, I responded with vague comments that encouraged his imagination. Exactly as I expected, he became convinced that something incredibly valuable was hidden inside. Soon, his curiosity turned into fixation. Then his behavior became even more concerning. One evening, the property manager called me. Ethan had arrived unexpectedly and demanded access to the building. When he was refused entry, he remained outside for hours, observing entrances, exits, locks, and security cameras. The surveillance footage showed him studying every detail of the property. At that moment, I knew he was planning something. Instead of confronting him immediately, I prepared for what I suspected would happen next. Additional cameras were installed. The investigator remained involved. The property manager was informed of the plan. Local authorities were also notified that a possible trespassing incident might occur. Then the call finally came. It was a rainy afternoon when my phone rang. The property manager sounded panicked. "Sir, Ethan is here. He's trying to cut through the gate." I calmly grabbed my keys and headed to the building. By the time I arrived, he had already damaged the first lock. The moment he saw me step out of my vehicle, his expression changed completely. Confidence disappeared. Panic took its place. He quickly realized he wasn't alone. The property manager was there. The investigator was there. Security cameras were recording everything. I walked toward him and asked a simple question. "Why are you here?" He immediately began making excuses. He claimed he was checking on family property. He claimed he was concerned about security. He claimed he had good intentions. None of it made sense. The evidence spoke for itself. Then came the moment he had been waiting for. I unlocked the doors and opened the building. Ethan stared inside, expecting to find hidden wealth, valuable collections, secret investments, or stacks of assets he had imagined for months. Instead, he found something entirely different. The building contained decades of company history. There were archived records, employee recognition displays, photographs from important milestones, community project materials, and countless memories collected throughout the years. The contents held enormous sentimental value. Financially, however, they were worth very little. There was no secret fortune, no hidden treasure, no mysterious stockpile of wealth. Everything he believed existed had been created by his own greed. The disappointment on his face was impossible to miss. That was when the investigators stepped forward. One by one, the reports were presented: debt records, financial histories, statements from former business partners, evidence of patterns he had spent years trying to hide. For the first time, there was nowhere left for him to run. My daughter stood quietly nearby as the truth unfolded. Every strange question, every suspicious conversation, every attempt to learn about my finances, everything suddenly made sense. Ethan tried to defend himself. He tried to explain. He tried to justify his actions. But the facts were stronger than his excuses. The image he had carefully built over the years collapsed in a single afternoon. For Sophia, it was devastating. She had trusted him completely. She believed she knew who he was. Now she was forced to confront a reality she never imagined. In the weeks that followed, she made one of the hardest decisions of her life. She chose to walk away. The process was painful, but she understood that trust broken at that level could never truly be repaired. Watching her go through that experience was heartbreaking, yet it was far better than watching her spend years with someone whose priorities were built on deception. Today, that old building still stands exactly where it always has. Most people see nothing more than an ordinary property. But whenever I look at it, I remember an important lesson. Greed has a way of exposing itself. People can hide their intentions for years, but sooner or later, temptation reveals what character conceals. Ethan believed he was breaking into a building filled with riches. Instead, he walked straight into the truth. And once the truth came out, there was no excuse, no story, and no lie powerful enough to save the life he had built on false intentions.